Hello, I'm Harun. In this video, I will present our group poem analysis When I Was 1 and 20 by Alfred Edward Housman. And in our group, there is me, Abdurrahman Hamid, Bentang Anura Sofistika, and Ahmad Hilman Arif. And here's the profile of Alfred Edward Housman. He was an English classical scholar and poet, born in 1855. He spent most of his life as a Latin scholar and professor at Cambridge University. Despite his academic career, he gained wide fame for his poetry, which is characterized by its simplicity, nostalgic tone, and themes of youth, death, and the English countryside. And the project goals, the first one is lexical thematic dimension, visual dimension, and rhythmic acoustic dimension. And here's the poem. When I was 1 and 20, I heard a wise man say, "Give crowns and pounds and guineas, but not your heart away. Give pearls away and rubies, but keep your fancy free." But I was 1 and 20, no use to talk to me. When I was 1 and 20, I heard him say again, "The heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with sighs and plenty, and sought for endless rue. And I am 2 and 20, and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true." And here the summary. This poem tells about the advice given by a wise man to a young man to not easily giving his heart. He can give everything he has, such as money and time, but never give his heart. Because if he has given his heart to someone, then there will be a price to pay. The price is endless heart pain, suffering, and regret, like we are taking bitter medicine every day. At the end of the poem, the young man recognizes the truth of this advice and feels the consequences of not listening to it when he is 20 years old.
Hello guys, my name is Bentang Anura Sofistika. Now we will talk about lexical thematic dimension. Okay, first let's talk about the theme about this poem. The theme of this poem talks about maturation and regret, as he realized that involving his heart will result in suffering and regret. From this experience, he realized that love comes with a high price. This poem talks about confessing his past mistakes. He regrets not listening to advice he was given, and now he understands the importance of protecting his heart. Okay, let's talk about the diction of this poem. I heard a wise man say, the use of the phrase wise man show the contrast between a young man who doesn't know anything and a wise man who have advice to him. And with the word wise man, the readers can accept that wise man has the authority to give advice to this young man. And this also makes the reader feel that the advice that will be delivered in the whole poem is important because it's said by a wise man. Next, give crowns and pounds and guineas. The use of the word crown is to show pride and respect, while the use of the word pounds and guineas are to symbolize our wealth and possession. We can give them away, because if they are gone or lost, we can still get them back in many ways. Next, but not your heart away. The use of the phrase your heart underlines the main topic of the poem's theme. We can give anything we have, but not with our heart. Next, give pearls away and rubies, but keep your fancy free. Pearls and rubies, these words symbolize valuable objects, so the reader will understand that we can give valuable things, and the word fancy tell us to keep our desire and our heart free. But I was 1 and 20, no use to talk to me. No use. The sentence expresses young people's stubborn attitude and ignorance of advice that is conveyed by the common idiom no use. Next, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. The word heart symbolized human feelings. Bosom means chest, and the word vain has another meaning which is useless or pointless. Then we can understand that the feelings that we have that come out for our heart should not be given in vain. We should not give it for free. Formality in diction in these lines is formal with words such as bosom and vein, which give a serious impression to increase the seriousness of the statement. The phrase psych aplenty highlight the intensity and frequency of the psych. The sentence explains that a result of this young man not listening to the advice from a wise man, he is experiencing great feelings that are very intense and repetitive, which cause him to breathe heavily. Next, and salt for endless rue. Endless rue refers to endless regret and sorrow. Rue is an ancient term for regret and sadness, and the word endless describes a sense of endless suffering. The last, and I am 2 and 20, and it's this true. The phrase 22 describes an experience that grows with age. This phrase underlines that this young man has grown up and has experienced life. And the word "oh" expresses the emotion of surprise, realization, and highlight that he has learned something. The word true is repeated twice at the end of the poem, which show the truth of the advice given by the wise man when he was 21 years old. And the word true is also repeated twice to highlight that the advice is really true. Okay, let's move to the imagery. Crowns and pounds and guineas. This illustrates the various forms of currency, which represent material and wealth. Next, pearls away and rubies. This imagery of pearls and rubies represent precious gems, and the heart out of the bosom. This image describes the heart being ejected from the chest. Next, displayed with sight aplenty. The image sight aplenty show frequent and heavy sight, indicating emotional pressure, like that. Okay, the next, and sold for endless rue. The image of endless rue describe never-ending regret and sadness. And the next, and this true. This phrase highlight the truth of the advice which is proven through his own experience. The next section is figure of speech. Metaphor, the heart out of the bosom. The word heart is directly compared to the feelings in someone's heart, and those feelings are forced out of the chest. Next, hyperbole, and short for endless rule. Endless rule is hyperbole that exaggerates the word endless rule to emphasize the sadness that will never end. Next, repetition. When I was 1 and 20 and I am 2 and 20. The sentence is repeated to emphasize the change in the young man's attitude. The next repetition is this true, this true. The sentence is repeated to emphasize that he acknowledged and realized that the advice given is true.
Visual dimension. In visual dimension, we analyze structure, stanza form, and concrete poetry. In the structure, When I Was 1 and 20 by Housman is a short two-stanza poem. Each stanza is made up of 8 lines, known as octets. The first octet follows a rhyme scheme of A, B, C, B, C, D, A, D, with several of examples of half rhyme. And the second stanza follows the patterns A, B, C, B, A, D, A, D. In relation to meter, the poet made use of iambic trimeter. This indicates that each line comprises 3 sets of 2 beats. The first of this is unstressed and the second is stressed. Stanza form. In the first stanza, when I was 1 and 20, the speaker begins with begins by divining the fable-like circumstance that's to follow. He recalls how, when he was 1 and 20, or 21 years old, that he spoke with an older man. This man was much wiser than him and more experienced. Particularly, this man knew a lot about the word of love. The regular rhyme pattern generates a simple, steady beat that emphasizes the lesson of the story. It feels straightforward as if told from the perspective of a young person. This is an interesting characteristic of the poem, considering that the poet wrote the poem at 30. The wise man's advice to the youngster was that he should give away all of his money. The omen says the young man should give away his pearls and diamonds. It is better to do this, the omen says, that is, to fall in love. But because the young man was only 21 years old, there was no way that he was going to be taking this advice. A reader should also consider how the use of rhyme and enclosure in these lines helps create a rhythm that's consciously joyful and even. And the second stanza has a fairly similar structure to the first. In the first sentence is repeated and it's whole, and the second line is identical in that speaker is conveying the words of the wise man. While the youth was yet 21 years old, he heard the man mention that when people give their hearts away of their bosoms, that they always lose something too. Love comes with a price to be paid. Now, the speaker knows that is true. The continual use of the word true in the last phrase indicates his frustration and feeling tired naturally. He's becoming a wise man. Is it the poem? Is it concrete poetry? When I was 1 and 20, is not considered a concrete poem, while concrete poetry typically involves arranging words on the page to create visual shapes or images related to poem's theme. Housman's poem does not employ such deliberate shaping of the text. Instead, its visual presentation is straightforward, with a conventional layout of lines and stanza. However, while it may not be an example of concrete poetry, the poem still utilizes other poetic devices and techniques to convey its message effectively.
Hello, my name is Ahmad Hilman Arif. I want to present the rhythmic acoustic dimension from this poem. Meter and rhyme. The poem primarily uses iambic 3-meter, where each line has 3 iambic feet, an unstressed syllable, followed by a stressed syllable. However, there are some variation. It's like when I was 1 and 20, it's iambic 3-meter. I heard him say again, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with size and plenty, and sold for endless rue. And I am 2 and 20, and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. And oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. Also, iambic 3-meter. Then rhyme. The rhyme scheme is ABAB with the end words of the first and third line rhyming 20 and away, and the end words of the second fourth lines rhyming me and free. Alliteration. Alliteration involves the repetition of consonant sound at the beginning of words in close proximity. It's like size, such as sights, a plenty. Repetition of the S sound, sold for, also same repetition of the S sound. This repeated consonant sound is creating a musical quality and drawing attention to the ideas being presented. Assonance. Assonance involve the repetition of vowel sounds in nearby words, and the instance of assonance in the poem is 1 and 20 are plenty. Repetition of E sound heard out bosom. Repetition the O sound paid size plenty. Repetition the A sound paid and a similar A sound in size. Salt for roux. Repetition of the O sound in salt and U sound in roux. 2 and 20. True. Repetition of the U sound. 2 and 20 and true. Okay, let's continue. Repetition. The repetition of the phrase when I was and 20 at the beginning of each stanza emphasize the passage of time and the speaker's reflection on their past experience. This repetition served to unify the poem thematically and rhythmically. And the instance of repetition in the poem is "'Tis true, 'tis true." The phrase is repeated for emphasis at the end of the poem. I heard him say again. The words "again" indicates the repetition of the advice given. And number 3 is "and I am 2 and 20." The age 2 and 20 echoes the earlier mention of 1 and 20, emphasizing the passage of time and the change in perspective. This device assonance and repetition work together to create a musically quality and to emphasize the central themes of the poem, particularly the wisdom gained with age and the emotional consequence of giving one heart. Thank you very much.
So that's all the result of our poem analysis When I Was 1 and 20 by Alfred Edward Housman. And thank you very much.